Hello there, welcome along. This is Business Connections Live. A very happy new year to you. It is programme number 66. We don't count the Christmas programme and the New Year programme as a proper number. So here we are, brand new year, a brand new start. Maybe for your business as well. My guest tonight on the programme is John Davies. He's the director of Just Cash Flow, and we're going to be talking about the importance of cash flow to your business. It really is one of the most important things to consider. I was talking to John before we actually started the programme, and for businesses that are starting up, it really is an integral part of what you need to consider when and how you start your business. And for established businesses as well, it doesn't matter how big or small you are, many businesses have gone to the wall simply because the cash flow. Been profitable businesses, but the money hasn't come in at the right time. So what do you do in that particular situation? How do you get yourself out of that jam? Who do you turn to? Do you go to the banks? Do you go to independent lenders? Who do you talk to sort out your cash flow issues? And how do you prevent it happening again in the future? Hopefully tonight we're going to give you some advice on how to do that. So let's meet our guest, John Davies. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, John. Now, we met previously before.
We did.
At the network, the business show, in fact, at Olympia. That was a fantastic show. You were sponsoring all sorts of things down there, weren't you?
We were indeed. I also, if you remember, had man flu at the time as well. So fortunately, that's now gone. So fully recovered.
So you sound completely different now. Big, butch and bold, which is fantastic. Let's kick off and talk a little bit about you first of all, so that people get a bit of a handle on what you are. But before that, let's talk a little bit about Just Cash Flow. Who and what are Just Cash Flow?
Okay, well, let's make it quite simple. So Just Cash Flow PLC is a quoted company on the GXG market, and it itself is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Just Loans Group PLC.
So they may well be familiar with Just Loans then. We may have seen that.
Again, to be fair, it's the brand Just Cash Flow that most people will see. The parent is there as a parent. It'll then have Just Bridging and Just Finance underneath those, which again are specialist lenders in their own particular fields. But in truth, for most of the listeners, they don't really care, quite honestly. The idea is that they'll see the brand Just Cash Flow. It does what it says on the tin, and again, it should be easy for them to actually relate to us.
So if you had to define what Just Cash Flow was all about, how would you do it in a couple of sentences? If you're down the pub talking to your mates, so what do you do, John? I work for Just Cash Flow.
Yep.
How would you describe it in the most simplistic terms?
Okay, what we do is help companies who are what we call in the gap. So therefore, they're either trying to get somewhere, whether it's to raise much larger funding, or they're trying to complete on something, they want to bring in stock, but there is a gap. And there's a gap from where they are now and to where they want to be. What we look to do is help them fund that gap. So therefore, quite often with organisations, we talked earlier at the head of the show about planning or you're in a fix. Unfortunately, it comes or creeps up upon people, which is that suddenly they find themselves in a fix, or somebody hasn't explained something to them, or the VAT bill comes in higher than they were expecting because they've got the timing slightly wrong, or the corporation tax has to be paid, or they've taken the director's loan but didn't resent. All of those things happen, and suddenly you find yourself in a spot.
I mean, from where you're sitting, I mean, it is a problem within British industry. I mean, people do see this all the time. We do see successful companies going to the wall.
Yes.
Do you see fundamental mistakes all along the line when companies approach you? Maybe they've been to the bank, maybe they're now looking at an alternative source of funding. I mean, do you see the same kind of things? Is it the business's fault, or is it their customers' fault?
Okay, well, there's loads of questions there.
I know. Take any one that you wish and just go from the top.
Well, first of all, it's not a UK phenomenon. I mean, it's worldwide, because it's the same everywhere. At the end of the day, you've got to balance your books. And it doesn't matter which currency or which company market, you've got to balance them. The challenge is recognising when you're going to have a cash flow issue. Now, that sounds perverse the other way around. A lot of people struggle with the difference between profit and loss and cash flow. Profit and loss means quite simply the profit you're making, and that's normally a book entry, as in you bought the product for X, you sold it at Y, your costs were Z, what's the profit left? And therefore, hopefully, sort of +1, because that way you're making a profit. That's not cash flow. You can go out of business making that profit if you don't have cash to pay your staff, your suppliers, etc. Perversely, you can actually stay in business for quite some time, making losses, providing the cash is coming through the door. Now, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but if you want to stay in business, if you don't nurture cash flow and respect cash flow, you will likely go out of business. Now, the funny is, if you're running a business that is looking to remain particularly steady, the old steady Eddie, nothing wrong with steady Eddie whatsoever. Keeps the business reasonably simple. You know that you've got to buy your product for, £5, £10. You then know you're going to sell it for some more. You've only got yourself to pay, or one or two members of staff. It's quite straightforward to work out what it is. It's just good old-fashioned housekeeping. What some people call the mamas and papas businesses.
Yep.
They rarely go out of business because it's straightforward to manage. Where the danger comes is when you seek to grow that business, because then the danger becomes working capital, over trading, and simply finding yourself in a hole before you realise it. And from our point of view, we often are seeing slightly more mature companies have issues, not necessarily the smaller and startup businesses.
Really? So it does hit all facets of business then?
Normally, younger companies go out of business not necessarily because of cash flow, it's because the idea was wrong.
Right.
It was just the wrong business, with the wrong people doing the wrong thing. They didn't believe the market was going to behave they did, or they thought they could sell more or get a higher price. That's normally what happens to younger stage businesses. Because if you're in a younger stage, what do you need a huge amount of capital for? The danger becomes, especially when we're coming out of recession, and this is what, if we're to lead to the government right now, we are supposed to be coming out of recession. I don't necessarily follow that, but at the same time, people are getting more confident.
Other governments are available, yeah.
For sure,
Okay,
yeah. But again, that's where the danger becomes. Confidence returns, the terrific, let's up the ante in terms of marketing, let's get the sales out there, let's hire some more salespeople, let's build this business. And that is a danger, because then you're in danger of literally running out of cash. And that's when you're going to be exposed, because if you don't plan for that, the worst time is to be in the mire and then trying to find your way out of the mire.
Trouble is, though, you're in an industry here where you're talking about this entrepreneurial spirit, people
Sure.
taking risks, people
Yes.
going out there trying new ideas,
Yes.
trying maybe to, if the new idea truly works, then you've
Yes.
made $1 million. If it doesn't work or it doesn't quite work, then you've lost $1 million.
Again, without trying to be too controversial here, there are 1,000,001 ideas every single day. It's converting the idea into a profit and into a sustainable business. That's the trick. And that doesn't mean that good ideas always succeed and bad ideas always fail, because they don't. So it's not just about the idea, it's the execution of the idea, the timing of the idea. Is the market ready for what you've got to offer? Is somebody prepared to pay the price for what you're offering? For example, you've got that app at the moment for the taxis. Is it Uber or something similar?
Yeah.
With a market cap of billions right now? How? I mean,
Exactly.
so what happens there is that you have loads of budding entrepreneurs thinking, well, crikey, if they weren't able to make that kind of money sitting in their bedroom, I can do the same. Here's my idea, please fund me. Without necessarily sort of looking at, well, does anybody want to buy that, or what really happened in the history, because all you're reading is this through the media lens.
But we must draw the distinction there, though, mustn't we? Because what you're not is an organisation that will fund ideas. That isn't what you're about. There are other
Correct.
parts of your organisation that perhaps can maybe do that. But just cash flow as such is actually looking at that short-term, immediate issue.
What we're looking to help and aid are enterprises. And we mustn't confuse enterprises with somebody in a bedroom building an app. There are going to be, in the future, especially with the access to the internet, lots and lots of people bringing new products to the market we haven't even thought about just yet. And they need to be supported, possibly by those people who benefit from that as well, the likes of your Googles and others. That's not the businesses we seek to support, because more of them will disappear than will succeed. It's like playing the lottery, almost. Who would have thought that an app for a taxi drive would actually become worth so much? You just wouldn't have thought that.
No.
What we're looking for is enterprises that employ people, are looking to build that business, looking to add value to their customers, and take that business from maybe 3-4 employees right now to 20, 30, 40, and become a proper enterprise.
It's interesting, because it's quite obvious that you have an absolute passion, and of course the whole idea at the beginning of the programme is to find out who you are.
Sure.
And we've kind of went right down that we've started hard on.
Yeah.
This is what Just Cash Flow is all about. This is what we do. Here's the problems that we've resolved. What about
Sure.
you? What's your background?
Okay, well, if we go back to the very beginning, and this is where perhaps some of the lessons can be learned, because when I first started out in business back in 1979, which is 36 years ago now.
No, you don't look that old.
I know.
You must have
Child labour, and it's when you started in those days. No internet, no mobile phones, no faxes. And you look at
Sounds
how
lovely, does it? Sounds bliss, actually.
It does, because sort of you write a letter and you got a response about 2 weeks later. And of course, things have changed so dramatically. In those days, you couldn't get your hands on information so quickly because it simply wasn't available. If you wanted to learn something, you went to your library, quite literally. So I started off back in those days in the old double glazing industry. Now I can say that now because I've had therapy, and I can now say it, hopefully that industry.
I shook hands with you earlier on.
For sure.
I haven't bought anything, have I?
Well, see, what a terrific industry in its day, because it taught so many people so many things about business, and it taught myself and many others the absolute importance of cash flow, because in that day so many companies suddenly became major companies and major employers very quickly simply through cash flow.
But were you aware of the lessons you were learning, do you think? Or were you just a successful person that was working in a successful industry? Like, were you in sales at that stage?
Correct.
So you were in sales at that stage. So
sure.
A successful sales, I could imagine you then.
Yes.
Long hair, bit of a swagger, Mini Cooper.
Leave the hair out, yes.
But you weren't thinking of that. You weren't thinking about the cash flow of it. You were thinking about, obviously, the sales and the success that you were having.
Sure. Like all things, I think the best skill you could possibly have as a entrepreneur and director. And I've said probably hindsight would be the number one skill. If you could teach it, you should have. Mm-hmm. Because you don't know any of this thing when you're in the middle of it. You just simply don't know. You're doing it in the main by the seat of your pants, because you are, and you're looking at it saying, well, right, I can sell, or I can produce something, I can make something, and you do the normal maths, which is if I can sell 10, I make a profit of £1. If I sell 20, I make a profit of £2, and so forth, and there's 1 million people who may buy it, and you just do it simply like that, which of course is the wrong way to do it. But if we just look at that industry, we're about going back 34 years, but at the same time, there's a lesson here in just pure cash flow and how to build a business quickly. In those days, they would sell a product to the customer. The customer would typically buy £2,000 worth of product. The deposit taken was normally 25%. So that was straightforward, which would be £500. And you were paying your salesperson 10%, but a week later. So whatever sales you had in week 1, you were getting 25% of your sales value in week 1, and you're paying your salesman 10% of that the following week. You'll be buying your product in probably week 4 for installation, getting paid in week 5, but not having to pay the person who made the product for you until maybe week 10 or 11. So therefore you were able to fund your growth because the customer's deposits were funding the growth of the business. Salespeople were happy because they were getting paid quickly as well. You were able to get full payment for the product in its entirety, probably 4 weeks before you had to pay for it. So therefore, if you worked that out reasonably quickly, you didn't count profit because you didn't actually know what profit was. Because you're thinking, well, this is great. So you go out and sell, say, £20,000 worth of product in a particular week. You're going to bank 5,000 in that week. In the second week, you had 5,000 from that week and 5,000 from the next week, which is 10,000. You only had to pay your salesman 10% of that 20,000, which is 2,000. You're already thousands.
And of course, that is the way that the small business, even today, will be looking at it, won't they? They'll be cashing ahead on their cash flow, won't they?
That's a smart way of doing it in terms of cash flow. Yes. Now, the challenge you've got is the fact that what you then find is, how do we keep on growing? Because if you keep on growing, terrific, the cash will stay ahead of the game for quite some time. However, if you plateau and then suddenly your fitting now goes to 6 weeks and suddenly you've got to pay a little bit sooner, suddenly working capital gets into play. Next, you've got losses are creeping up on you because you think you're making all this money because originally you have all this cash. Then all of a sudden, as the graph goes, you think, hang on, where's all that money gone? And it's gone because you're actually making losses. But that's why, almost like a boom and bust, the double glazing industry in the late 70s and the 80s grew very quickly. Demand from the public, which is terrific. However, it was the cash flow in the businesses that allowed them to grow so quickly. As we all know, that ended in tears for so many thereafter. And
I suppose what we're saying there is, isn't it, the cash flow allowed them to grow.
Sure.
It was also the cash flow that in the end held many of them back and killed some of them.
Well, no, it was the losses then that got them.
Yeah.
So there's a balance. Now, for us as an organisation at that time, we also then went, okay, but if you want to increase your sales, because if you really want to grow your business, but how do you get more sales? Well, you're either going to grow them because you're either going to discount your pricing, or you're going to spend more on marketing, or you're going to employ more salespeople. You're going to have to do something to increase your sales. For ourselves at that time, it was the ability to show the customer how to pay for the product, so therefore the affordability factor was there. Terrific in terms of you could therefore sell more, you could put them onto a finance agreement and take a commission in those days from the finance house, so therefore vastly more profitable. But of course, what was happening was those customers were buying almost deposit free. So now there was no deposit in week 1, but you still have to pay a salesman in week 2. Now, again, for a while you think that's terrific because you can, wow, look at all this business. But again, if you plateau, or eventually it will catch up with you, because if you then try to grow that business and really start to grow, now you've got the working capital considerations, because you have to pay more of these commissions, and because you're building, not everything is going at the same time. So your installation, instead of being 4 weeks, is now 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks, and whoops, that's now got to be funded. And that's where the issues go in growing businesses, is the fact that suddenly it just creeps up on you. You need the capital for this business to keep on its current path. And again, with planning and with knowledge, you can plan for these things. But of course, everybody's excited, everybody's all hands to the deck, you're doing probably 4 different jobs in one go. You miss it.
Yeah. Listen, we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more. I mean, it's an interesting lesson actually to learn that, I mean, this isn't a new phenomenon at all. I mean, what we are talking about here is something that's been going on since, I'm pointing over there, since God was a lad. But I mean, the thing that is interesting about this is that you may be finding yourself in that situation. Maybe the model that you have for your business at the moment is working on that, where you are taking some up front and you're working and you're surviving on the ongoing cash flow that you have in your business to survive on to the next month. I mean, you may be using your cash flow as your working capital, but what's the next big bill that's actually just sitting around the corner? Is it going to be some form of a VAT bill or something like that? And how's that going to affect you? Listen, we'll talk more about that and some of the different things that can actually be helped by Just Cash Flow, and maybe John will give you a few words of wisdom and advice on how his organisation can help, what you need to be doing, what the criteria is that you need to have in your head when it comes to using Just Cash Flow. That's all to come in just a few moments' time. Let's look back on the programme that we had just before Christmas. In fact, we had Tracy Carr. She came in. We were talking about time management. Kind of goes hand in hand a teeny weeny bit. If you haven't had a chance to watch the entire programme, now's your opportunity to watch Tracy Carr on Business Connections Live. Our guest this evening is Tracy Carr, leadership expert, speaker, coach and serial entrepreneur.
My background, which is leadership development over the last 14 years, and also noticing as a single parent of 3 children that what people do, and me included, on a day-by-day basis is often very different from what they said they would do in their goal setting, or even their vision, mission, or their big plan for their business. You have those 3 elements, which is coaching. Everybody knows about business coaching and the benefits of business coaching. Everybody knows the importance of setting goals. That's absolutely vital, that you write down your goals. And I'm sure that most people recognise that we are living in an age of overwhelm, and we do need, all of us, to be better at managing our time. If you invest 20 minutes at the end of the day, then you're going to save 2 hours tomorrow. And that's a really good discipline to remember, because otherwise what we're doing is running around like headless chickens, not really knowing what we should be doing next, or even if that task that we're about to complete is taking us towards our goals or not. So people go into Outlook and they're overwhelmed because all they're doing is building this big, long, static list, which they probably never ever will get round to doing. Okay, so in terms of the system, what we've done is we've come straight into the time management end, and people who use the system are taken straight to this screen, which is where we dump and chunk. For the users who already use it, that it will save 20% of your time, because you're not writing things on little lists. You're not saying, oh, what did I have to do next? You're not writing things on post-it notes. You're keeping everything in the same place, which saves a lot of time. Well, now, because you've got your colour-coded filing cabinets, you can literally drag and drop those items into a reprioritised order according to your new, and let's face it, every day is new. So you've got new things to take into consideration. You can reprioritise those lists by drag and drop. And this is where the paper system no longer works, because it can't be that flexible. And we all need this flexibility built into our day. And what people are doing is trying to remember everything, and that doesn't work either. So what this system does is it takes away all of the stress of managing a complicated life and making sure that you prioritise according to your goal. You can set a goal, but if the goal isn't an emotional impulse, you're not really likely to follow through. If people don't have or haven't had any experience in coaching or goal setting, there are plenty of support notes in there that will help them to think through how to set goals, for example. Okay, my name's Tracy Carr. I am a leadership expert. I've been working with large corporations for 14 years. I'm also an entrepreneur. I have run several businesses as a single parent of 3 children, and I think I have some information to share which could be useful to you in making sure that you have your best year ever in business 2015. And I just want to start by sharing some very simple tips that I've developed over the last few years, which is when you're looking at setting your goals, have a big think about what it is you really want on an emotional level. And the reason that I say that is critical is because when you hit the wall, and let's face it, we all hit the wall, you're going to find a way round that wall if you know why you're doing something. So the very first thing you should do before you set those goals is to ask yourself, why do you want it? Why do you want your business? Why do you want to grow your business? It's probably not about achieving financial goals. There's probably something deeper which is much more meaningful to you. So pull out those golden nuggets, record those golden nuggets, and then from there, once you've got your vision, you can break that down into chunks, which are a goal for the year. You can, from that big 12-month chunk, write down what is the goal for those 4 quarters. And then from those 4 quarters, you set your monthly goals. And of course, from those monthly goals, you will break all those monthly goals down into tasks. I hope that that's been helpful for you. And if you'd like some support, you can go to www.bestyearever.biz, where you'll find a system that can take you through that whole process.
You're watching Business Connections Live. Tracy Carr there. It's a great programme, by the way, incidentally. If you get an opportunity, do go online and have a look at it. Tracy Carr, great system. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest this evening is John Davies, Director of Just Cashflow. He's talking to us about the importance of cash flow to your business. What should you be considering? Where do you go to? Who do you talk to if you feel that you're actually in the mire and you do need someone to help dig you out? Even if it's just for 1 or 2 days, 1 or 2 weeks, whatever it is. We're not talking about funding, and we're not talking about the traditional choice of loans here. What we're talking about is a short-term solution. If you look at their website, in fact, it actually says here, we're funding new and growing UK businesses. You'll get a free, no obligation funding decision in less than 6 minutes. It's confidential and your credit score will not be affected. You can even do it all over the phone. A flexible cash facility. Now that's what's important, from £20,000 to £500,000. It's the cash you need when you actually need it. That's what we're talking about. If you're a business, when you need the cash, and that could be that you know that on Friday you've got to pay the staff and the big invoice is going to be paid next Tuesday. It's to tide you over so that when you pay your staff, the money's going to be there. It's just taking those bumps out. It's levelling out your cash flow situation. That's just one of the ways that you can actually use Just Cashflow. I suppose that's right in what I'm saying there. I just want to make absolutely certain that I'm getting it, because that is really what you're about, isn't it?
Sure. The one word I would say we need to look at is the word mire. Yes, we can call it shite if you want to, but it's not getting into that position first. There's a difference between requiring funds and being in the mire and requiring funds. They are 2 completely different concepts. If you plan ahead and know you're going to need capital for whatever purpose, whether it's to buy something or to cash flow something or something, you're planning. If you're planning, you are going to get the very best terms because you're going to prepare everything to get those funds.
Do you think business owners today stick their head in the sand a little bit and they just let it creep up on them and they just don't allow themselves to be prepared?
Again, I think it's wrong to be necessarily critical of them with their head in the sands. I mean, running a company these days, I go back 34 years.
I will say something right in a moment.
It's just that, you know, there are people espouse all these different things. Go back 34 years ago, no email, no internet, no everything. You had time to think, you had time to do things. You don't anymore. You're sitting there with a PC on your thing, an iPad there, iPhone. We are on 24-hour communication. It's coming at you always. You've got to make decisions quickly and the right ones. There's a huge amount of pressure. So therefore, head in the sand, perhaps not, but perhaps too busy. Now, the last segue was about time management. Is it when you're building the business, you don't have a board, you don't have a financial director, a public relations officer, a person who heads up all of the staffing requirements, HR department. You don't have necessarily all those people around you, all experts in their own field or studying in their own field to become better. You don't necessarily have that luxury. So therefore, you tend to be doing 2 or 3 jobs in one go. And if you're 40, as by the most, was selling things, then are you that good necessarily at production? Are you necessarily that good at
So what do you think the skill is? You know, the entrepreneur these days is someone who has maybe the big idea. He goes out there, she goes out there. They've got a big idea. They want to get their business up and running.
Sure.
And their skill is going to be in their product, perhaps,
Sure.
or the service they're providing.
Sure.
It may not be in the finances. While the idea may be brilliant, they may get that bit wrong.
For sure. Again, we put an article out about 4 or 5 weeks ago, quite controversially, where we suggested that we believed directors should go through some form of examination before they become directors of a company. Now,
How was that greeted?
believe it, in many quarters people are supportive, others say, but that's going to dampen enthusiasm, dampen in entrepreneurship, it's going to stop people coming up with all the ideas, etc., which is fine. Or they say, well, perhaps it should be optional. Okay, well, then liken that to a driving test then. Shall we say that we understand that before you can drive on a road, you should have some lessons and you should pass a test to show you're competent to be in charge of this vehicle.
Isn't the school of life where you learnt your skills from, isn't the school of life probably, that's the one that's really going to test you the most, surely?
Well, school of life can be a long school. And it can be there for a long time. Isn't it smarter to try and understand and learn from others, perhaps, who have made those mistakes? And the one thing I would suggest to most people is pause for 1 second. Just pause. Just think, okay, what am I good at? What am I good at? I'm good at science. I'm great with good ideas. I'm good at communicating. I'm good with people. Excellent. Good. I should do more of that. What am I bad at? I'm pretty bad at counting, I'm pretty bad at spelling, whatever you're pretty bad at. So, right, okay, well, I can't be good at all things. That's not possible. There's no joke about the Australian player called Nobody. I said, why is he called Nobody? Because nobody's perfect. Yeah, there is nobody perfect. You can't do all things at all times. So look at what you're not good at and don't do what you're not good at. Find someone else to do the not so good at.
This is going back to the whole world of outsourcing, perhaps, or maybe bringing other people into your business, isn't it?
It is. And, we work with people like the Growth Accelerator, for example. Growth Accelerator is a government-sponsored scheme, which few people know about. But it allows you to bring external advisors into your business, supported in part by the government through Grant Thornton. Now that shows to us as a lender, for example, that someone actually recognises they need help within their business. You've also got the BAS scheme, the Business Advice Support Scheme from the ICEW, which is the Institute of Chartered Accountants for England and Wales. Now if you go onto their website, now they've got specialist advisors, so you're now talking to an accountant about your money and your business in advance of what you're doing, not historical. Very often you go to your accountant when it's all too late and you can do very little about that, as opposed to sitting down and planning it to begin with. So first piece of real advice about cash or anything else is understand it. Now you can read about it online, but find someone who does understand it and talk to them. Very often when we're getting applications through our door, we have some nervousness when the person we're speaking to doesn't understand the difference between profit and loss and cash flow. And when we question them on it, they say, oh, I leave that to my accountant. That's almost fatalistic, because I leave it to accountant. That means you've now sort of, there's this delegation.
You've abdicated all responsibility, haven't you?
Abdication.
And that is your business.
Correct.
That is your business on paper.
You can't abdicate it. You can't abdicate responsibility of what's going on in your business. You must know. Now, not all of us can be numerate, so therefore, you either go back and learn something about numeration, but the key thing is to understand. So therefore, when somebody does then prepare you the numbers, you actually understand what they mean. Now, again, we've spoken to people and say, well, in terms of your business, what are your accounts, what are your bank balances? We don't know. Well,
now, you mentioned the B word there, which is the elephant in the room, really.
Right.
And we haven't said, why come to you?
Why come to us?
Instead of going to your bank?
Oh, no, you shouldn't. You should go to your bank first.
So this is proper advice. So if I find myself, we're not in the mire, I remember that bit, but if I find myself in a situation
yes,
that I have planned forward for, while I'm in the planning stages,
yes,
I now have these alternative funding sources that are sitting there. The first place is not to people like yourselves, but to the bank.
Right, let's qualify that. First of all, we'll talk about people in the mire as well, because realistically there will be people who are facing that position. So we need to discuss that because they didn't know about this previously. But let's go back to your first protocol. Your first protocol should be for the cheapest funds possible. Cheapest funds possible are going to be a high street bank, your Barclays, HSBCs, NatWest, etc. Because they are obligated to provide the service, they're obligated from the government to be able to listen to your business plan, etc., etc.
But what you're going to find there, though, if you go to your bank and you need a short-term loan,
sure,
you go to the bank and the bank will, in many cases, will turn around to you and go, okay, you come in and we want your 2 years accounts up
sure.
front, we want to know what you're doing. On your website, we'll give you a decision in less than 6 minutes.
Sure.
That is a lot more attractive than going to the bank with all the other paraphernalia that you need.
Correct. Again, back to the planning, isn't it? Is that if you've got time, then, and you've planned ahead, that's what I do. If you plan ahead, it's your cheapest source of funding, because then you can go and produce all the, statements required, the P&L statement, cash flow statements, the business plan, the executive summary, and everything that goes with that. And the bank will take its normal anywhere between 4 to 12 weeks to look at that. And they might give you nods of approval that it's all okay, and then they may or may not lend to you. You just don't know. In the meantime, you're hanging on in there. What we pride ourselves on as an organisation is telling you very quickly, as in 6.5 minutes, whether we can or cannot consider your business going forward.
So what's the criteria then for you? What are you looking for? I mean, are there big no-nos? Or, I mean, you look at some of the insurance companies that are out there, and what they will do, they will offer insurance only to the best risks.
For sure.
And are you doing exactly the same? Are people coming to you and you're going, yep, you're an absolute 100% dead cert, we can see that, there's the money. Whereas, is that the situation, or is that the hole that you're filling?
Interesting. It is that we actually fund some people. We say, well, why have you come to us? Seriously, why have you come to us? Because you're sitting there, you have got a great business, it looks right, it looks proper, everything we see, why are you here? And we have testimonials to this effect where people say, yes, but my own bank just simply doesn't understand what we're trying to do. And one customer actually said, well, it's like business banking used to be. You could talk to somebody, because all of our own staff are former commercial bank managers of at least 15, 18 years standing. So they were the old-fashioned bank manager who actually understood. So when you came in, I remember my own first bank manager, Arthur Tavender. I mean, that's 35 years ago, and I remember his name, And you went in and you sat down in a great big desk, sat with him, and he told you, you got no chance, or that's interesting, I would try that, or go and talk to somebody over there, because he was the epitome of somebody who knew about business. So what we are trying to do is, when people come to us for funding, is also trying to point out to them some tips of where they should be going as well. So for example, they come to us and say, oh, well, we want a fund facility for £10,000. And we say, well, on what basis? Well, why do you want £10,000? Well, because they want £10,000 because they've got a bill of $10,000 to pay at the end of next week. They haven't actually sat down and thought, hang on, do we actually require more than that? So we'll say, well, fine, well, let's talk through the business then. So, okay, and then we discover they're a seasonal business.
Do you find yourself sometimes when people approach you for the short-term funding,
sure,
that they will approach with one figure in mind. And by the time that you've discussed it all the way through, maybe longer than 6 minutes, but
Sure.
when you have discussed it all
Yes.
the way through with them and they've talked to your team, that they end up taking more money
Or less.
or less.
Sure. Again, for us, it's getting them to actually address their own issues within the business. Because see, well, you're applying for £100,000. For what reason are you applying for £100,000? Or we think it's the right kind of figure. Well, it's bloody expensive if it's the wrong kind of figure. It's expensive if it's too much. It's expensive if it's too little. That's why we say, who have we spoken to about it? Have you sat down? Have you done this correctly and properly? Now, in terms of the speed, let's understand all this, is that we say we can give you, in principle, within 6.5 minutes. So for us, you asked the question about people who are whiter than white. Most of our customers have a story to tell. The story to tell is either the newness of the business, the changing direction of the business, the fact that they may have fallen at issues, or now they already have a facility with a bank, but they want to go back and tell them they want further funding to grow the business. They may be invoicing, discounting their invoices right now, and again, because of whatever reason, they can't raise any further funds from that. There's a whole plethora of reasons. But for us, what we're looking at very, very quickly is who's running this business? Who are the directors? What are they doing? And
So that's the key thing that you're looking at. It's their skills, their experience that they've got. What if then of the directors or a board maybe that's made up of diverse individuals, some of whom have been through the stormy seas of business at times?
Yes.
What do you do at that point? Do you look down your noses, or do you stand back and go, right, they've moved on from there? Maybe that experience has been important, therefore
Sure.
that makes them more lendable to.
what we look for is what we call a propensity model. Propensity means likelihood of. So yes, so somebody may have had a hard time 1 year, 2 years, 3 years ago. What did they do? Did they face up to it? Did they look to try and make amends to it? Did they try and pay back the people? What did they do? And therefore, if you can see that they have a likelihood that they will want to address those issues and put them right, it scores very highly for us. It also scores very highly if they tell us the truth on day one. When they say, look, you may as well know now, this is what's happened in the past. Could be a divorce, could be anything, but this is what's happened. Terrific. Truth is a great start in any relationship. And again, if they prepare to tell the truth in advance, then you know you can try and work with these people. If somebody's gone bankrupt, we have funded organisations where the directors have gone bankrupt within the last 3 years. We ask them to explain why, how, what happened, and the circumstances to that, and what's happened since. But we
How
have
often do you find yourself funding a company that's been to the bank and the bank has said no?
difficult to say percentage-wise, but we know it happens. It's
Well,
not
does it happen?
No, they don't actually say no. There's a difference between no. I mean, there's one bank at the moment saying we approve of 96% of all applications. At what stage of application are you talking about? So there, the reality is, it's. By the time they go through the whole thing of preparing everything, is have they got that amount of time? And also, do they get told no early on? It's not really something they want to do right now. You've got a situation where if you've got no assets, then you can apply for a government sponsor scheme. It used to be called small firms loan guarantee. It's called something else now. If the truth be known, how many people really got funding on the back of that? Not really sure. So I'm not bank bashing, because I think they've got a problem themselves as well.
And for a lot of businesses, they do a great job. There's no two ways about it.
For the whole, they employ a lot of people. They pay a lot of taxes. We wouldn't be without them. Fact. Okay. Mm-hmm. However, they're also trying to serve two masters. They're trying to serve, the media in terms of why aren't you lending to small firms? The government saying why aren't you lending to small firms? And the government says, but now you've got to have about this capital on your balance sheet. I mean, and again, if you're trying to understand the beast itself, how are they going to manage smaller applications of 10, 20, 30, 40, which for them is small beer, let's be clear. How do they actually having made all the job cuts they've had to make? They've had to get rid of a lot of very experienced people. You can't buy it.
They all work for you now.
I know, but you can't buy it. For us, I mean, we are fortunate. We went into the market, our lending is in Scotland. Why Scotland? Because the Bank of Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland, and Clydesdale laid off a whole bunch of very experienced people.
But the banks still do make money, though, don't they? And lots of it.
Thankfully they do, otherwise they wouldn't pay any tax on it.
Right then. Now what? And that's good too. I tell you what I'd like to do, if we may, we're going to take a short break for a moment, but I'd like to talk about how to improve the cash flow, some tips that you
Sure.
can give for for a small, medium-scale enterprise, or any business for that matter.
Sure.
The warning signs that you've seen that
Let me make a note of
businesses
that,
come
yeah.
up with, what are the things you should be aware of? If that happens to you, what should you be thinking about?
Sure.
And then you've got something that you call wage roller.
Sure.
I'd love to find out what that's all about. It sounds like a helter-skelter ride.
Okay.
So just a couple of things, and there's a few other areas that we want to go into. We talked a little bit about the applicants there as well. So we're going to do that in just a few moments' time. If you are watching for the first time, we hope you're enjoying the show. My guest this evening is John Davis, Director of Just Cash Flow. We're talking about the importance of cash flow to your business. And it really is so important. Something that's also important to us, it's a bit like cash flow really, is you watching. That's really important. And it doesn't matter where you're watching us. You are effectively our cash flow for this program. Without you, there's no point in actually doing this. Now, if you'd like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, there's a little thing just sitting here, a little graphic just in there. To click on that and you'll subscribe. That's going to let you know exactly when the next program is going to be coming up. If you're watching on iTunes, and that is really taking off at a great rate of knots, so you can actually listen to this. Maybe you've never tried it. Go onto the iTunes store, search for Business Connections Live, and you will come across all our programs. All of them are sitting there waiting for you to download, to have maybe on your portable iPad, your iPhone, your tablet, your Android phone, your smartphone, whatever, and you can listen to them on the train. And it's information like this that's going to be so useful to your business. If you're watching us on Roku, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you very much indeed. Right across the States, a lot of people watching on Roku at the moment. I met somebody here in the UK who is a Roku evangelist and who works for a company whose name is very similar to yours, actually, John, but more about that. No names, no back drill. But it just goes to show you, there's a whole host of different ways you can actually watch the programme. And please do let us know what you think of the shows. Tell us the kind of people you'd like us to get on the show so we can get them on to give you in business the information that you need. But do, please, subscribe. And here's the reason why. If you're a business owner and you need advice on how to make your business more successful, then Business Connections Live TV is just for you.
Our leading industry experts cut out the guesswork for growing businesses. How to use social media, what to expect from your accountant, web design, SEO, and so much more.
Business Connections Live TV is here to give you the motivation you need to succeed.
How you doing? My name's Brad Burton. I'm the motivational speaker that everyone's talking about right now, and I'm on Business Connections Live. What a show. What a show. People, do check it out.
If you're struggling with Facebook and LinkedIn.
Most people that I meet are on LinkedIn. Virtually, there's 14.5 million people just in the UK. I think the figures currently are 238 million people worldwide. But I would say that most of them don't really understand how to use it.
How to present your ideas more effectively.
Hello, I'm Philip Skinner, Shaw Walker Lees. A brilliant way to get message across. I'm actually thinking that we might switch away from our quarterly newsletter to do a video and get it sent through to staff and clients.
To generating leads and finding new business.
Hi, I'm Jim McLaughlin, Managing Director of business development company Axial. And I'd just like to say what a pleasure it's been to have the opportunity to appear on Business Connections Live.
Subscribe and be part of the Business Connections Live TV online community for free.
Business Connections Live TV every Wednesday, 6 p.m. GMT, or catch up on the Business Connections Live TV YouTube channel.
Make certain your business is connected with Business Connections Live TV. You're watching Business Connections Live, and please do subscribe to the channel if you possibly can. We'd love to have you as part of our business community online, electronically, all over the world. There are a lot of people out there at the moment. Great to have you as always, and great to have your company as well. We were going to talk a little bit about some of the different key topics that we've got here. I suppose really the tips that we're looking for are how to improve your cash flow. How does a business go about doing that?
Okay. Let's be clear. I do not want to come across as somebody who is trying to be on a soapbox, showing I'm all clever and this is what we did, because what I can share is things that we made mistakes on over the years. And simple things make a big difference. And I'll give you a quick little story to demonstrate this. Somebody came to see us in December of last year. Only 6-7 weeks ago, and they had a particular product or service we were thinking of buying, and then they made a proposal to us, and we said, terrific, yep, we'll have that. Great. they then said, and of course, we'll invoice you and then give you 28 days to pay. Well, that's interesting because I hadn't asked for that. I also thought it was interesting because they were now in competition to us, because now they were lending us their money.
Yep.
Because ostensibly we're buying a product, let's pick a round number, for £20,000. So therefore they supplied the product for £20,000 and then said they wanted payment 28 days. Now if we're clever, we'd order the product to come in on the 1st of the month and have a clear at least 4 weeks, stretch out to 6 easily.
Which is exactly what you do.
Correct. But therefore, I just took 6 weeks. So they've just lent me £20,000 for 6 weeks. They just became a lender. So how often in your own business do you do exactly the same thing? Do you automatically provide credit facilities to people who probably haven't even taken a proper credit check on, and yet you're lending them this money, and it's not even your money because you didn't have it in the first place? What you did was borrow it from the people that you were buying your product
Is
from.
this because the companies are so keen to make the sale?
For sure. Like I said, it's not a soapbox because I've been there as well. Is that you're keen to make the sale, you're expected to provide certain things, but of course when you're negotiating, terms of payment should be part of the negotiation, just shouldn't be a given. The example I was giving there was the fact that we're a lender with respect, we have plenty of cash. But from our point of view, is if you're going to offer me, 30, 40 days,
You're going to take it.
no, what I did was say, fine, on that basis, how much can we have as a discount for actually providing you on the button? Because we have the cash to do that. So therefore,
So what would be your recommendation then to businesses? Have we all fallen in the trap of that? The norm is to offer 30 days. Some take 60, some take 90.
Sure.
But the norm is to offer that. Should we all be going in and going, cash on delivery? We'll negotiate from there.
Theoretically, yes, but in reality is no. Let me give you again another quick story. So I sold my first company back in the mid-80s, and I sold it because we overtraded and ran out of cash. That was a fact. But we were bought by an organisation who had the cash, but who wanted the sales volume. Perfect. So I sold that company into Bowater Industries in the mid-80s. I went into Bowater House. Bowater House at that time was in Knightsbridge, opposite, what's the big shop called? What's shop in Knightsbridge?
Selfridges.
Selfridges, not Selfridges, it's the other one, but anyway there.
Harrods.
Harrods, thank
There we
you.
go.
There we go. So here we go, 5th floor, Bowater House, and it is just literally, huge floor plan full of accountants. So, wow, okay, so what, accountants run this business? Oh yes. So I now became a chief executive within Bowater Industries PLC at the tender age of about 26, 27. Although Numerate knew nothing about accounts whatsoever, a balance sheet was probably a diet as far as I was concerned. However, they insisted all of the group CEOs had to become financially competent. So I went on a course. A guy called Professor Mumford gave the course. He said, right, gentlemen, he said, here is how you actually understand running the numbers in the business. And he got a board and he said, I'm now going to give you the first rule of finance in a business. So all sat there with our pens and pads in those days. And he wrote in the plan, cash is king. Oh, that's not very clever, but what's that come from? No, cash is king. Without cash. Now, this is a major PLC with 50,000 employees worldwide. It's actually printing at that time. It was printing the pound notes, £5 notes at that time, but that's what Bowater did. So, but cash is king. He said, you've got to think about everything is being cash. So when you see your stock in the stock room, it's not really stock, it's actually cash. When you're seeing your sales go through the door, it's cash. See the employees? They're cash. Everything is cash. So therefore, if you've got stock in your stock room and it's there for longer than it should be, then of course it's going to become more costly. So now what you need to understand is, what is your stock turnaround? So all of these things became vital. Got all that, terrific. Right, he said, second most important lesson when it comes to managing finance. Got there? He said, cash is king, dash, absolutely. Very last one, but I went through that again. And the third one, he said, third rule, refer to the first two. And what that taught everybody, and those are all finance directors, is how important and critical cash is in your business. And you've got to look at everything in that business as being cash. And that all comes down to numbers. You have to understand numbers. So therefore, you've got to know how many sales, numbers of sales, what cash is that going to generate, how many widgets or product you've got to buy for that, how many staff you need for that. Everything then boils down to the numeracy around that.
It's very interesting you say that, because we actually did an exercise here where
Yes.
we worked out exactly how much it costs to open the door.
Yep.
Or not to open the door even.
As the case would be,
Yeah,
yes.
at the weekends.
Yep.
And it's a frightening thing when you actually work out every last single penny of it.
For sure. The old expression was to be sweat the asset, if you remember that from many years ago. And you would ask the question, so therefore, if you are paying for the building for 24 hours, because you are, and you are paying for that machinery for 24 hours, because you are, why not sweat it for 24 hours? Why do you think the supermarkets are open for 24 hours?
Yes.
It's called sweating the asset, because it's there. You've only got a certain amount of time to recover the costs of those. Now, so again, not all business can do that. I understand all that, but at the end of the day, you've got to start thinking about it. Now, if you are not a numeric person, now I'm a salesman, not an accountant, and it's true to say that not many accountants succeed in running businesses. That's because they're analytical. They don't necessarily have the flair or prepared to take the risks.
What you tend to see is in businesses, you tend to see accountants, a salesperson will grow the business by selling.
Yes.
And a accountant will tend to come in to save the business by asset stripping.
Correct. That's all too late. Yes.
Yes.
What you need is that at the outset. So therefore, go back to what I said maybe at the top of the show. Balance. So therefore, if you know what you're good at and know what you're not good at, and bring in those people around you that you don't have those skills for, but make sure you understand what it is they are reporting to you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
It does. So therefore, when you're... Let's do some simple housekeeping. Let's keep this simple. And if this is too simple for some listeners, I apologise, but try this.
No, it's not, it isn't. And the beauty of what you're saying is, it's the clarity that you're bringing over.
Right. Try this as a simple exercise. Is that you've got your business, so therefore, in any given week now, you should know what your sales are going to be.
Yep.
And you know what your purchases are going to be. So your sales are going to be either gross or VAT, so you've got to know what the VAT on the sales is, and you know what the VAT on your purchases is. So therefore, take one from the other, and that will tell you what your VAT liability is in any given week. Yep.
Simple.
Simple maths.
Yep.
Okay, got it. So therefore, open a separate account in your bank and put that amount of money in that deposit account every single week, because you know in 13 weeks' time you're going to have to hand that over to the government. Great. Simple. Now then, if you're able to do that every single week, and it grows every, and you could pay it every single week, you're running your business from a cash point of view very well. The moment you can't do it, or the moment you have to dip into that deposit account and bring it back into your current account, you've got a problem. That's your early warning signal. And that's when you need to do something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that's when you now need to start planning about why is that happening. So some analysis. Is it happening because you're not collecting your funds in quick enough? Are you paying your suppliers too quickly? Are you overtrading? But if you don't know the answer, you will go out of business. So find someone who can give you the answer.
So these are really the signs that you need to be aware of, aren't they? They're the signs that are going to be out there, that are signposts that are up in business that's going to help you identify whether you're getting it right.
Yep.
Or getting it wrong.
I said that was a very simplified way, but it kind of demonstrates where you are. Is that if you're having challenges paying either staff or people, in terms of suppliers on time, every time, you're obviously having a problem. Again, going back to my early days, people would give me accounts, they would give me a P&L, a balance sheet, etc. I think, what the heck was this all about? And then you look at the bank account and think, well, hang on. So if we've only got 20 grand in the bank and we know we're only going to collect £30,000 from people, that's 50,000 in total. Yeah, apparent according to this, we owe £80,000 out. Well, we haven't got to be Einstein to work out here. We have a problem.
Yes, indeed.
So,
indeed.
So therefore, it's understanding why you've got that problem. And it may not be because you've got losses. It may be simply because you are expanding your business and suddenly you've got more money in stock. And you're not turning around quick enough, or people aren't paying you quick enough. Yep.
Now, and I hear what you're saying, and a lot of people, for instance, I know a lot of people who use, we were talking about the VAT there,
sure,
who use the VAT as part of their cash flow.
Sure.
And
who hasn't?
And who hasn't.
Yes, yeah.
And there are organisations, and we were talking outside before we started the programme, that there are, depending on when you start, and when you pay your first VAT quarter,
yes,
that can put you in deficit, or it can put you in, it can really upset the cattle cart.
For sure.
If you're not too.
We had an example of this with one of our customers literally a couple of weeks ago. They were expecting a major VAT refund, legitimately, but because of the various frauds that have taken place on carousel frauds of VAT, Customs Excise said, or HMRC these days, said, no, we'll come and see you first. Oh. Oops. Nothing to worry about, but they were coming to see them first. But they weren't coming the same day. Why should they? They weren't even coming in the next few days. They were coming shortly. And of course,
all of a sudden, all the planning goes out the window.
Everything. Panic mode. Absolute panic mode.
So is this the time then that, and I suppose what we've done is that we've looked quite a lot at the cash flow issues and the problems that cash flow can cause your business.
Sure.
But what we haven't done, and I thank you for doing that, is that we haven't looked at how just cash flow can help situations like that.
Sure.
So what are the services then that you actually provide to people when they approach you?
Fine. We are what we call short-term funder. Short-term is typically 12 months. What we provide is an exact replica of a bank overdraft. We're not a bank, so we can't call it an overdraft, but it works in an identical situation. Now, an overdraft is there, if we go back in all the old days, was there to ease the ups and downs of standard trading. So therefore, it may be 1 week somebody paid you late, it was okay, you could dip into it, etc., etc. So that's what we provide. Now that can be, as we said, typically between 5,000 all the way up to 500,000. However, what it mustn't be confused with is its purpose. If you're looking to buy a piece of machinery, that's asset finance. Yes, that's an asset, it's fixed.
And that isn't what you're about, is it?
Correct.
That's not what. That is going to your bank and saying, I need a loan for some additional equipment.
For sure, or indeed many finance houses who do similar. There are many good finance houses who are, if you go onto the NACFB website or the FLA, which is the Finance Leasing Association website, they've got plenty of people there who provide the financing for that. And we have one lender who we know finances scaffolding, for goodness sake. So there are niche players in
You need it to build buildings.
You certainly do,
Yeah.
and of course it's booming, so therefore they have a nice niche as a business. So, and if you look for cars, vehicles, vans, etc., again, a plethora of lenders for that. So we have to understand the difference between funding assets, with what I call serial number. So if it has a serial number, that's asset-backed funding.
Right.
That's straightforward. If you're buying a building, that could be a mortgage or possibly a bridge. We can help on the bridging side of things, and we help with the gaps in that. So, for example, it's a classic. Somebody was buying a nursing home. It's for just under £2 million. They weren't told that because the building was VAT registered, of course, they had to pay £400,000 on completion. No, everybody assumed they knew. They did not. They're 1 week away from completion, and said, solicitor said, well, can we have the £400,000? So that's when they came to us via the broker.
Now, so did they come to you
Yes.
to fund that for short term while they sorted out the correct funding for it?
What they did then was they didn't have the funding for the VAT. So we funded the VAT payment for them, knowing full well that in the next 13 to 15 weeks, they were going to receive that back from Customs and Excise,
Right.
because they were able to reclaim it.
Is it expensive money, John?
It depends.
I mean, what's the bank at the moment? What if you're borrowing from the bank? What if you're lucky for
You'd be
business?
lucky.
If you're lucky, if they do go, you'll be lucky. But I mean, if you were borrowing from the bank, what kind of it currently? So here we are. It's January 2015.
Sure.
What kind of interest rate are we looking at for borrowing?
Again, let's understand what it is borrowing, because people get confused between APRs and rates. So again, let's simplify this. Is that if you are borrowing to buy fixed assets, you're going to pay between 8 and 12% per annum for that, because you have a loan amount is fixed against an asset, and therefore you pay back over a period of time. What we're providing is a facility, and we charge on a daily basis, and we are priced on risk. So therefore, the more secure we are, the cheaper we can charge. The less security there's, the more we have to charge. Again, it depends upon amounts. Percentage-wise, it costs more percentage-wise to borrow a small amount of money than it does a big amount of money, because it's the same legal work, same everything else that goes to borrowing £5,000 as it does £500,000, more or less. So therefore, from our point of view, we are typically charging, if we are having a good class risk, then we're charging, if you borrowed that 100,000 and kept it for 12 months, which you're not going to do, but if we did, then that rate would be 18% per annum, just for people to do that. If, again, it's a higher risk.
This is what's so important about what you do, isn't it? It's the fact that you can give a quick decision that sometimes the bank can't do.
Sure.
That you can borrow an amount of money quickly to get you past the situation that you find yourself in.
Sure.
That you can pay back quickly.
let's take...
I mean, what's the typical length that someone will borrow from you for?
Again, it's about having the facility. Peace of mind. Let's talk about a product called, you asked about Wage Roller a short few minutes ago.
Yeah.
Wage
No,
Roller.
I've got this on the website, Wage Roller. What's that
Fine.
all about?
What's it about?
then?
Simple thing. You're running your own business. You should have, or be one of your greatest fears, is not paying your staff on time. Whether you're paying them weekly or whether you're paying them monthly, it's a fear a director will have. If you've only got 1 or 2 staff and things don't work quite right on the, say paying them weekly, on the Friday, you can normally sit down and say, look, Bob and Mary, so-and-so hasn't paid us, as you know, we should have cash, can I pay you on Monday as opposed to, I'll pay you half now and half on Monday. And normally, because they know you well, they'll go along with that, because it's the 3 of you. When that becomes 33 of you, that becomes a completely different argument, because now in your staff...
That's a lot of money all of a sudden, isn't it?
And also, you'll have people who are saying, well, no, I have to have my money today because I've got my rent to pay, I've got the mortgage to pay, I've got the school fee, all of those things that they've got to pay. Now, and if you don't pay them on time, the cost is incredible, not just in pure financials, but staff morale, staff respect, everything goes. Also, you as a director spend half the day trying to scurry around for money, get money, transferring from your own bank account, borrowing it on your credit card. I've done them all, right? So therefore,
Been there, done that,
we've
got
done
the
all those
t-shirt.
things. So therefore, I'm not sort of lecturing people there. It happens. Wage Roller is a simple product that we will agree a facility in advance. Let's say your wage roller is 10,000 to keep the math simple for me. So what we can agree, you come to us for that. We say, fine, every Friday, assuming you're paying your staff on a Friday, we will put £10,000 into your bank account.
Now, if I use it, I pay for it. If I don't use it, what happens? So am I still paying for the facility?
Okay. If you send us the money back that afternoon, we'll charge you nothing for putting it into your account and nothing for receiving it back in the account. So therefore, you have literally paid nothing for that facility. Now, we do charge a monthly fee, which is 0.5% of the facility. So on £10,000, that would be £50, 10 quid a week we charge for having the facility. But what happens if you can't pay us back? So therefore, on the Friday, you've got the £10,000 in, so you know the wages are all paid, happy days, but the debtor, or your customer who was supposed to pay you on the Friday, rings you and says, John, look, we've got a bit of a problem here, blah, 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 we're going to send you the money on Monday, if that's okay with you. You're thinking, it's not really, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do? You don't want to sort of hack off your best customer or favourite customer. You know he's got 1 or 2 issues. You want him to order with you next week. You know, say, well, yeah, okay, we'll find Monday, but you can't pay later than Monday because we're fine. So what happens now is that you can't pay us back. And you can't pay us the whole tender. In fact, you decide not to pay us any of the money back just in case he doesn't pay you on the Monday because you've got other bills to pay. Let's assume that you were a mid-risk business as far as we're concerned and we're charging you 0.1% per day for those funds. If you multiply that right out, that would be 36%, but 0.1. On that 10,000, we'll have charged you £10 on the Friday night, the Saturday night and the Sunday night. So on the Monday, you're going to get a bill of interest from us for £30. So it's cost you £30 to have paid your staff on the Friday on time for them to carry on, not knowing anything whatsoever that's gone on, having no issues, you're still running the business, they're still seeing everything going working, and you didn't have to go hunting and chasing around and worrying about how you were going to tell them that you couldn't pay them.
Is it difficult for a small business to set that facility up if they wanted to?
Not at all. Back to 6.5 minutes again. Who's the business? What are they doing? So from our point of view, is that could all be set up typically within 10 to 15 days from the start of the application. So that's reasonably quick. It can be done quickly. We've done it in the same week. We've done one in the same day only because we knew the story and the background. But the key thing is that one simple product makes a huge difference in how you're running your business. Years ago, I used to actually give lectures on directors on how to run their companies. And one of the things I always said was, you have to understand your staff are always using you as the barometer.
Yeah.
So if you turn up to work of a morning and you bring all the troubles in with you and you open the door and you kick the door, whatever the case, and you're groveling and you're grumpy and the staff think, gosh, something's wrong, and therefore the whole business itself thinks something wrong, and everybody's looking at each other.
And we do hear about runs on companies, don't we? It's only got to trickle out into the public voice.
For sure.
And all of a sudden you could have a major issue in your hands.
Absolutely right. So therefore, you've got to come into that office and you've got to be the person looking to run and take that business forward. Now, if you know that things are going to be sorted and are right, then you're feeding that properly. But if you know you've got issues, you can wear them, and you don't want to. You want your staff, all of your staff, I don't care whether it's sweeping the floor or whatever, to be somebody who's proud to work there. They don't want to be worrying about are they going to get paid or not. Hence, Wage Roller, and that's what it does. Simple product, simple idea, very inexpensive, but it works. So again, it's a solution. So therefore,
I mean, well, it sounds like it does sound like a fantastic solution. I can see that being the kind of thing. I mean, that's a proper business tool, isn't it?
Sure.
John, you're not going to believe this, but we are now running overtime.
Wow. Okay.
We could talk forever. I do, if you can, in just a couple of single sentences. Just answer these before I invite you to look down the lens and just give those takeaways. Very simply, what type of companies can apply, and how easy and quick is it?
Okay. First of all, any limited company. And speed is basically information, but we can tell you yes or no in principle within 6.5 minutes.
How can I improve my chances of making certain you say yes?
Start now in terms of making things look right to us. So therefore, look at your own credit profile, making sure that you are making your payments on time, look at your own personal borrowings, look at the company's credit status, and making sure that the information you can provide is as clean as possible.
And as a word of warning, and we've said this already, but as a word of warning, how well prepared are businesses when they do approach you?
Again, from our point of view, is if they're not prepared, it just takes longer. We're not saying no because you're not prepared, it just takes longer. So therefore, if you don't know the difference between a P&L and a cash flow, say, well, can you go and talk to your accountant for him to explain it to you so you know what you're doing? There's a big mistake here. If your company needs 40,000 and you've borrowed 20, you've worsened your position. You now are not going to be able to pay that 20 back either because your business isn't going to survive because it needed 40. So you must know what it is you actually need and want. So clarity. And if you don't know, don't be afraid to say, I don't know. And say, okay, and ask us if we can point you. We work with a huge number of consultants, like I said, Growth Accelerator, the BAS organisations with all the accountants. We can say, well, go and talk to these people first, sit down with them just to get clarity, to know what it is you're doing. And sometimes we will say no purely because we think it's in your best interests not to do this. Your business is going bust and you should stop now. because
do not waste any more time on what you are doing. Walk away. Somebody
has to tell them, because you can just tell because you say, well, hang on, your position is actually worsening. I got all this business coming in. No, you're selling them at a loss. Trust me, the more you're going to do, but we'll make it up with the volume. No. And you can see them on a career path and they're going to crash and they're going to pledge all their assets, all the family's assets, everything that goes well. They're going to pledge all these things and they're going to lose it. And we think that's the wrong thing to do, and that's why we said from our point of view is we can't advise people because we're a lender, but what we do say to people, if we think they're not fully understanding it, we do suggest they do get advice. It's important.
John, it's been a fascinating hour and a bit, in fact, actually listening to it. I think there are a lot of people who are probably sitting watching the program right now and they're saying to themselves, didn't realise I could get myself into that kind of fix.
Yep.
But now realise that perhaps maybe there is a solution or at least a helping hand out there.
Sure.
There is an olive leaf.
We want to help people. We can only make money if we lend money and get it back. Lending is easy, getting it back is the hard part.
Don't we all know that? Sure. Never lend to a friend, is what I say. John, what I'm going to do, I'm going to invite, I always ask for our guests to do a bit of a takeaway. Sure. A minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, half an hour if needs be. Straight down camera number 1, which is way over there in the darkness.
Number 1, there you go.
Straight down there. If you'd like to introduce yourself at the very beginning,
sure.
To say who you are, what the name of the company is, and just the takeaways that people should be considering, should be remembering when it comes to what they're doing in business and what they are, where you come in to that business cycle.
Okay, I'll try that for you.
All right, camera number 1 is all yours.
Camera number 1. So good evening. So it's John Davis of Just Cashflow PLC. I am the marketing director of the company, and therefore my job is to make sure people understand what we do and why we do it. If you are a company in the UK, you are looking to grow the business or feel you can grow the business, then you should talk to us. If you're looking for funding, we always recommend, if you can, don't borrow. But the reality is, if you do need to borrow, perhaps try your bank first, because that would be your better way of doing it. You may decide perhaps crowdfunding or P2P lending is the way forward for yourself. Terrific, but that takes time, and perhaps you may want to talk to us in the meantime to fund you until you particularly get to that position. What is good for you then is that if you are working with us, we'll actually provide you with a referral or recommendation. Remember the good old days of a testimonial for your bank manager? And that's what we provide to your possible new lender as well. We are very keen to support proper businesses. We're very keen to provide entrepreneurs within the UK, but it's entrepreneurs with a solid business platform, not people who are just wishfully thinking they've got a good idea and therefore people will send them loads of money for doing that. We like good old-fashioned businesses, engineering companies, people who are employing people responsibly and looking to be part of their community, because that's where ultimately the growth will come from within the UK. And if we can be part of that, then we've done our job and we'll do our best to do that. So thank you for listening.
Well, no, thank you very much for being part of the programme tonight. It's been absolutely fascinating. If you found it fascinating tonight, thank you very much for watching all the way through. Our guest on next week's show is Peter Lavadier of Charles Russell Speechlease. They're lawyers on issues that businesses face when buying and leasing properties. That's what we're going to be talking about next week. Property is very important, of course, but you've got to have somewhere to put your business, haven't you, at the end of the day. If you thought tonight's programme was fascinating, you think to yourself, do you know what, a programme like that would really suit my business. I would love to come on a show like that, or even have a show like that on my website, that I could promote my business. I could tell people with a passion. They say that when you tell a good story, it's like singing from the heart. If you've got a great story to tell, are you telling your customers that story? Do they know that you are doing what you think they know what you're doing? If you want to tell them that story and you want to tell it effectively, why don't you get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live? We could do a programme like this one just for your business. And if you'd like to sponsor the show, you can do that as well. It's as easy and straightforward as that. Don't forget, join us next week on the show when Peter joins us. It's going to be a fascinating show when we look into the whole issues around the law when it comes to buying and leasing properties. But for now, Mr. Davies, can I say thank you very much indeed. You haven't done bad for a double glazing salesman. It's been a pleasure having you with us tonight. I hope people get the angle of what just cash flow is all about. And I suppose it's right to say at the very end, rule number one, go to your bank. Rule number two, there are people like you. Just Cash Flow is one of the major players, but there are other organisations.
There are other
as well.
organisations, correct.
And you know, they may suit your business slightly better or whatever, but
sure.
they're out there. But don't be afraid to talk. Just know your figures.
And tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
Just tell the truth.
Because if you don't,
we'll know.
So, on that warning, they know where you live and your family. Listen, thank you very much indeed for watching tonight. We hope you've enjoyed everything that you've actually seen. We'll be doing it all again live next week on the programme. All you got to do is tune in to businessconnectionslive.com. We'll see you then. Don't forget to email us or give us a call. Until next week from me.